All right, let's move on to the next segment. That's on data sharing, find, discover, and accessibility, introduction to Cohort Discovery Tool, API, and MCP. Sammy Smith and Ruth Montero from the ImmPort technical team are going to present and give more insight into CDT and Swagger API. With that, it's yours, Sammy. Take it away.
Thank you, Sanchita. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay. So hi, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Sammy Smith, and I am a data scientist on the ImmPort team. In this next part of today's workshop, we're going to be talking about ImmPort data findability and accessibility. So before we dive in, just a brief outline of what we're going to cover in this presentation. So first of all, we'll touch a little bit about how is data findability and accessibility really central to the ImmPort mission? Next, how is ImmPort fair? And we'll talk about what that means. Next, what is an MCP server? And then finally, what modes of access are available in ImmPort for shared data? So getting back to that first question, what is ImmPort's mission? Our mission really is to maximize the value of the research data from programs and collaborations of DATE and NIAID. We want to be able to archive primary data for long-term preservation, and then we also want folks to be able to reuse that data to make new discoveries. And so in order to make that mission actionable for researchers, we need to make sure that ImmPort has features that allow researchers to find the data that they're looking for. So we know that it can be overwhelming to be faced with this giant repository of data that has all different types of data, and we want to make sure that researchers have the tools to efficiently access what they need. So we touched on this a little bit in the introduction to the workshop. We know that ImmPort shares data from many different programs and external organizations. Because of that, we have studies across many different research domains with a diverse collection of result types. So obviously everything within ImmPort ties back to immunology and allergy research, but within that, there are many different subsets of research focuses. So moving on to our next topic, how does ImmPort support FAIR, and what does FAIR mean? So FAIR is an acronym that stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable. A very crucial part of ImmPort's mission is that we want to make sure that ImmPort is adhering to these FAIR principles to increase the utility of our data. I know that Sanchita touched on the topic of FAIR in the intro to this workshop, but we're going to review this concept again because it's particularly relevant to this portion of the workshop. So let's talk about how ImmPort data is findable. So we have a browser-based user interface called the Cohort Discovery Tool. You see a screenshot of that here on the left, and we'll show how to navigate that in the demo portion later on. This feature allows a user who doesn't want to utilize any sort of programmatic access to the data to navigate with a point-and-click type of interface to find what they're looking for. And then beyond the ImmPort hosted search tools, ImmPort data is also made available through a variety of other additional search engines that you can see listed on the right-hand side of the slide. Next, how is ImmPort data accessible? So a couple of ways that ImmPort makes their data accessible is we do have a very simple registration and login process. So it's completely free to register for ImmPort. Anyone can register, and we want to make that barrier to access really low. Once you accept the data use agreement from registration, you can then download any data from ImmPort. Next, we've made available our APIs, or application programming interfaces, for those folks who want more of the programmatic access to our data, to be able to write scripts that make use of specific queries that can be run in a repeatable way. We have lots of documentation about how to use those, and we'll show some examples of that later on. And then one of our most recent features is the ImmPort MCP server, which is built on top of our APIs. So that acts as more of a natural language-based AI agent interface for those APIs. So again, we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of this presentation. And then next in the hands-on portion of this workshop later on, you'll actually get to interact with this MCP server. Next, how is import data interoperable? So once you've searched within import and found the data you're looking for that we host in our repository, the interoperability piece makes it to where you can combine this data with data from other repositories in order to facilitate those cross-study analyses. And then lastly, how is import data reusable? So going back to one of those pieces of the mission of import, the main thing that we want folks to be able to do is once they find the data they're interested in, to reuse it, to find additional research insights from that data and to publish it and make it available to the scientific community. So now that we've gone through the concept of FAIR and how import supports FAIR, let's talk a little bit about our next topic, the Model Context Protocol Server, or MCP server. So what is that? This is a new technology that import has really embraced. We'll talk a little bit about what it is and how it helps users of import. So an MCP server is really, you can think about it as a bridge between our data, our immunology research data, and AI assistance. So it's an interface that gives the modern AI models, which we're all learning more and more about these days. So think things like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. It gives those models direct, structured, natural language access to the vast repository of research within import. So it's built on top of our import APIs, and it acts as a wrapper around those APIs so that AI agents know how to make use of the APIs efficiently. So why is this helpful? One, it helps you discover data with natural language. So you can ask a complex question in plain English and receive structured results back from import that the AI agent can then use to answer your question for you. It reduces the time to finding the answer to your question from something that may have taken hours before to now something that might take minutes or seconds. Next, we have seamless authentication built in, and we'll walk through some examples of what that looks like later. And then finally, this technology facilitates cross-study synthesis. So you can pull data from multiple studies and allow the AI agent to help you analyze them together. The main point that I want you to take away from this portion of today's workshop is that import has three primary modes of access for our shared data currently. They vary depending on how programmatic or how low code you would like your approach to be. So our no code approach is this Cohort Discovery Tool. That's our browser-based interface where you can point and click to search for the studies you're interested in. Then moving to the next mode of access, our shared data APIs. This is more of a code-based approach in order to access the data in a repeatable, scripted way. And then the third and newest way of access is the MCP server that's built on top of our APIs so that folks can use AI agents in a low-code or no-code manner to access our data. So now we're going to move on to the demo portion of the workshop, and we'll show some examples of how to use those first two modes of access. And then in the next phase of the workshop, we'll have a hands-on walkthrough of how to use the third mode of access, the MCP server. So let me swap my screen now from the slides to the internet browser window. I have a couple of these links here already opened up so that they're easy to access. Okay, let's move this out of the way. The first thing we're going to look at is the CDT. So remember, this is our browser-based UI for shared data, which, if you recall, was the first of our three primary modes of access for shared data. So we're here at the CDT homepage, which is just import.org/shared/search. And let's walk through an example of how, as a researcher, we might use this to find what we're looking for. So let's say I'm a researcher who's interested in rheumatoid arthritis data specifically. Maybe that's the focus of my research lab. So I can type in the search bar at the top here, rheumatoid arthritis. And this is just a free text search that's searching across many different fields within the ImmPort database for anything that might match rheumatoid arthritis. And we can see here very quickly our results are returned. We found 49 studies that match that query in any way. But maybe I want to be a little bit more granular about my search. Let's say I want to focus in on studies where condition or disease is specifically listed as rheumatoid arthritis. And maybe I'm also interested in making sure that any of the studies that come up are including female participants because we know that that particular condition is more common within females. So I can go over here to our facets, which allow us to filter our search results in a variety of different ways. So I can click on condition or disease, and now I'm typing rheumatoid arthritis over here, and I can see if I select this item, now we have 17 studies that match. And then if I filter it further to include that subject demographic that I'm interested in, if I select female, I now see that I have 13 studies that match those two criteria specifically. And let's say I want to dive down just a little bit further and I'm specifically interested in a certain assay method. Maybe my lab is really focused on ELISA data, so I want to see if there's any similar ELISA data that also meets these criteria. So I can go over here to assay methods and type in ELISA, and I see once I select here, now we're down to, we have a single study within ImmPort that matches all those criteria that we're looking at. So if we click here, that will open up that study summary page in another tab. And now we have lots of information about that study that we can dive into. So now that you can see how to use the CDT, our browser-based UI, to find shared data, let's turn our attention to the second mode of access, our shared data APIs, and see how you can use the APIs to accomplish the same thing that we just did with the CDT. Maybe you're interested in accessing the information in a programmatic way. So I'll show you how to navigate on our website to the documentation pages that explain how all of our APIs work. So we're going to go over here. We have a bar at the top that links to our documentation. And we have a helpful drop-down menu with commonly accessed documentation pages. So I'm going to click on the API documentation one specifically. And this takes me to the page that tells us about all the APIs that ImmPort has available. I'm going to specifically click the shared data one. And now here, that tells me all about the shared data APIs. And I can click here to open up our Swagger UI. And this gives us all of the information that we're interested in. So I'm going to move this window to the right-hand side of my screen so we can see it on half the screen. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, the window that was behind it, that's our Google Colab notebook. So we're going to be using that to interact with the APIs today. So both of these pages, the Google Colab Notebook and the Swagger API, are linked on that last slide of the presentation that we just went through. So if you'd like to try this on your own after today's workshop, those materials will be easily available to you. So what you're looking at now on the left-hand side of the screen is a Jupyter Notebook running Python within the Google Colab environment. So that's an environment that is free and open to anyone to use as long as they have a Google account. And then on the right-hand side of the page, we have our shared data API documentation that's hosted on the ImmPort website via the Swagger UI. So what we're going to show today is what this Swagger documentation looks like and how to read through it and find what you need to use the APIs. All the different types of APIs that are available, what they do, whether they require authentication or not, all that info that you need. So this Swagger page also gives details about the various parameters or options that you can pass in to the APIs to control specifically how they work. And then over on the left-hand side, we'll be showing that actual Python code of how you would call these APIs in a script. So for this portion of the workshop, we aren't necessarily expecting you to run this code alongside me as I'm going through it. But if you would like to, either in real time or later on when you go back to review these materials, let me show you how you can make a copy of this notebook into your own Google account so that you'll have permission to run and edit and play around with it. So if you go up here to File and then do Save a Copy in Drive, that will make a copy of this notebook in your own Google Drive account, and then you'll have all the full permissions that you need to run it and interact with it. So to start with, in this notebook on the left-hand side again, we're going to import a few required Python packages that allow our code to work. And then beyond that, we're going to start building out a helper function to help us handle all of these API endpoint requests today and whether they need or do not need authentication to be passed in. So shifting our attention back over here to the Swagger docs on the right-hand side, you can see a nice summary at the top of the documentation that says for each of the subsets of the APIs right here, does it require authorization or authentication or not? So moving back to our code, at the beginning, we're going to be setting up some URLs that are common to all of our API endpoints. So of course, the base URL is just the import website, and then the data query URL appends /data/query onto that base URL. Next, for authentication, for any of the APIs that require authentication, we're going to create something called an API key. So Srini's going to talk a little bit more in specifics about how to create an API key and walk you through exactly how that's done later on in the hands-on portion of today's workshop. It does require an import account, but for our demo purposes here in the notebook, we've actually created an import API key that anyone can use during the workshop to practice making queries. So just know that that key will be deactivated shortly after the workshop today. And if you want to continue using this example code, you'll need to follow the instructions that Srini is going to go over later about how to create your own API key, and then replace our demonstration one here with the one that you generate. So best practice with API keys is you want to actually export that as an environment variable. You would do that outside of the notebook via a terminal or something like that. But for simplicity's sake, today we're going to hard code it into our notebook here, just so you can see how all of the functions work. So this is our helper function that will allow us to call all of the various endpoints for the API. We're going to pass in what the endpoint is, whether or not authorization is required, and then the format that we'd like our results to be returned in. So we're going to use JSON for our demonstration purposes today. From there, I'm not going to walk through all of the details of how this helper function code actually works, but basically it will take in the endpoint that you specify. It will use the Python requests package to make a request against this API endpoint. And then if authorization is required, if authorization is true, it will handle passing in a header for the request. And then the function will return the set of results to you. So now that we have that helper function out of the way, I'm going to walk through some examples from the main section of our code. So turning our focus back again to the Swagger documentation page on the right-hand side, you have the summary up at the top that tells you the different types of APIs that are available. But then scrolling down a little bit further, you have more details about each of the types. And they all have a drop down here that you can use to click on to see what specific APIs are available within that section. So we're going to start out with the first section, study search. These are the endpoints to support text and faceted search of study and subject metadata. So you can see here that there are a couple available, one for searching studies and one for searching subjects. If you recall, we at our research team, we happen to be interested in rheumatoid arthritis. And so we're specifically interested in studies that have female subjects as well, because that's what we had searched for on the CDT previously. So we want to use this search studies endpoint, and we're going to expand this on the documentation page to see what types of parameters that we can send into this query. So we can see here there are lots of possible parameters available. I'm going to focus in on the ones that are relevant to us right now. We know that we want our condition or disease to be arthritis. So I'm going to scroll down. That's where that one is specified. And then right here, we want to set sex equal to female to make sure that the studies returned have female participants. So looking back at our code on the left-hand side over here, we can see how to format the endpoint itself. So we build out the URL with /API/search/study, and then we pass in the condition or disease and the sex parameters to the URL, just like this. One thing I do want to note for this particular endpoint, the number of records that will be returned per page, that's called the page size. And if we look over here on Swagger, we can see that the default page size is 10. So in other words, if we don't specify anything on page size, it's going to return 10 records to us. But we know there's actually more than 10 studies within ImmPort that meet these search criteria. So we're going to pass in a larger page size of 100 just to make sure that we actually get all of those hits that we're interested in. So if you don't pass in page size and you're seeing that you're always getting 10 results returned, that's why. So remember, this particular endpoint does not require authorization. So we're going to pass in authorization equals false. And then here I'm showing what the actual results look like themselves. So you can see what that JSON looks like. So this is returning the results from our open search query on the back end of the ImmPort database. And it's got a lot of metadata about the results that are returned. It tells you how long the search took, how many hits you got. So you got 13 hits or 13 matching values. And then within that, it gives you more details about the specific hits themselves. And that's really what you're interested in for this particular query. So now that we see the overall structure of the returned results, we see that the highest level key is hits. And then within that hits key, its value consists of a secondary level dictionary that also contains a key called hits, which is what actually gives us the list of the studies of interest. So we're going to reformat those results that we're interested in as a pandas data frame. And we see that we get this nice list of 13 studies that matched our search criteria that we found on the CDT before. So we can see there's lots of information available in this last column here called _source. I'm going to show an example of how you would expand that out with pandas. So we're doing something called normalizing the column, which basically means that we take all of the keys that are common to one another within that column and make them their own column. So now we can see, just looking at the head of the data frame or the first 5 rows, lots of additional information about each of the studies. Let's go back over here to the left-hand side. Okay, so if you recall, our research team is particularly interested in ELISA data. So let's see if we can find anything about ELISA data in this search result. If we scroll over here to this assay method column, we see here that the second study on the list, which happens to be study 473, does contain ELISA data. So now we're going to move on to our second set of APIs, our study data section. So I'll move over with our Swagger API to that section as well. So now that we found a study that we're interested in, I want to find more information about it. So these endpoints in the study data section, they are all endpoints to support the retrieval of study data for a single study, including all of these various endpoints listed here. So we see from our previous search that study 473 matched what we were looking for. So let's find out more about it. So we're going to start with our basic study information endpoint, which we can see is the first one listed here. So it's a fairly straightforward API endpoint. It's just going to be /API/study/ whatever study accession you're interested in. We're going to pass that in as our endpoint to our helper function. And then here, looking at our JSON of results, we can see it's a dictionary that provides all of the same higher level metadata that if we go back over here to what we found from the CDT, exists on the summary page. So peeking over here, we see the basic study information gives a very similar level of information as to what we see on this page from the CDT. So things like its study title, the description of the study, objectives, etc. Since we said we're specifically interested in ELISA data, now we're going to take a look at what experiments are available. And we're going to use the experiments endpoint, which is this one here. So let's see, how do we build out that endpoint? We know that the URL looks like /API/study/experiments. And then again, we specify the study a session of interest. So passing those results that we receive into a pandas data frame, we can get that nice tabular format. And we do see that there's 2 different experiments associated with this study that have ELISA data. So now let's actually download that data that we're interested in. Now we're going to move on to the next section of APIs, the study result section. So expanding that over here on the right-hand side on our Swagger page. So this is the study results section. These are endpoints to download study experiment or assay results. One thing I do want to note is that this set of endpoints actually allows multiple studies to be passed in as a parameter to facilitate cross-study comparisons, whereas the study data endpoints that we looked at just a minute ago only allow us to pass in one study at a time. So that's kind of one of the main differences between these 2 sets of endpoints. In this case, we're just going to pass in a single study to our study result endpoint. And the API endpoint is going to be /result/ELISA, and then you specify the study accession as a parameter. So here, the results look like a list of a dictionary of values. And we're going to pass that in as a nicely formatted pandas data frame so we can read it a little bit more easily. And now we can see that we have 3,473 rows of ELISA data associated with this study. All of this ELISA data is stuff that has been parsed into our import data model. But let's say we're interested to see if there might be some additional ELISA data in the study files beyond what's parsed into import. So now we're going to move on to the last 2 sections of APIs, which are the study file manifest section and the download study file section. So for the first one, study file manifest, this is an endpoint that supports retrieving a manifest, or you can think of that as just a list of all of the files associated with a given study. So we're going to use the URL endpoint /API/study/manifest/ pass in the study you're interested in. A couple of notes about this one. If we use the default file type of all, then it will return all the files associated with a study. But then there are other possible options you can pass in as well, like protocol file or study file or result file. If you're interested in all of the files for a study in a compressed zip, you can download that all at once using the zip file option. In our case, we're interested in study files specifically, so I'm going to pass in study file as my file type. And you can see once we run that particular query and format it as a pandas data frame, we have a list here of about 43 exactly study files. And again, going back to what we see within the CDT, if we go over here to the study files tab for the study of interest, we do see that there are 43 study files available. So just to reiterate, you're getting the same information from the CDT as you do with our APIs. So I'm going to look at just the head of this data frame so we can see a little bit more easily all of the column names with the data. Let's scroll over to the part of the table that shows us our study file names. So that's going to be right here. I'm going to kind of just glance through here and see if something stands out to me. I see that this last one here, it has ELISA in the name, so that's kind of a little alarm bell going off in my head that that might have some data that I'm interested in. So I'm going to try downloading this file and see if it is what I want to have. So there's a pretty good chance that that probably has some ELISA data in it. So now I'm going to move on to our last section here, the download study files. We're almost done. And the endpoints in this section support the download of our study package files, any of them, including the file types that we talked about before. So this makes use of something called the GA4GH DRS ID, which is kind of a mouthful of an acronym, but it's basically just a unique file identifier, sometimes called the file UUID, that allows us to specify which file that we're interested in. So from our manifest endpoint, we can grab the file UUID associated with the file that we want, and we can pass that into our download endpoint. So that's what we're passing in here to this latter part of the endpoint. And the other thing we have to specify with this particular API endpoint is the access method. So in other words, how do we want to access or download this file? There's two possible options for this one, either S3 or stream. Using the access method of S3 will give us something called a signed S3 URL, which is essentially just a time-limited link that we can click on to download the file. One thing to note is that, oh, I didn't run this previous one. Hang on. Well, I think I might have disconnected.
And Sammy, just a heads up, we've got it in the chat. Someone else running into the same error too. So you can do a little troubleshooting in real time to help folks through.
Okay, let's try to see what's going on with some of our other endpoints and see what's going on here. I just ran this like a minute ago when everything was fine. But that's the fun of coding. It looks like I'm actually having trouble accessing the I'm gonna disconnect and reconnect. So let's restart our session.
Yeah, I'm seeing 401. It's probably related to API keys.
Yeah, okay. So maybe our API key has expired. So I'm gonna try one more time with this API key, and then we will do this live and we will grab a new API key.
Tammy, just a quick reminder that we will wrap up in a minute.
Yes, we will wrap up in a minute here. Yep, I think you are right, Srini. It is probably the API key that's having a problem. So let's just show how to fix that real quick. So we're going to create an API key. Srini's going to show you an example of how that API key creation happens. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab an API key that I have saved and just paste it in and use that one. Or if anyone on the import team has another one handy that we can share real quick, I'd be happy to use that too. Try passing this one in here. And there we we go. Okay, so we got a little live troubleshooting of the demo here. So if you're having an issue with a 401 status code that you're running into, like Srini mentioned, that probably means your API key has expired or you may need to generate a new one. So now that we've fixed our API key, we do see that we got this lovely success message with our URL that is available for folks to click on. So as Sanchita mentioned, we are at the end of our demo time here, but that's fantastic because we've covered everything that we need to. So really, I just want to hit the point that with these APIs, you can start out broad with searching all of the data that you're interested in within ImmPort to narrow it down to what you want to focus in on. And then once you start finding those studies of interest or the subject of interest, you can use many of our other sets of APIs to get more information about exactly what you're looking for. So with these APIs, because they can be used in something like a Python script, like we were doing today, if you want to set up a pipeline for your research team that's constantly looking to see if there's new studies of interest available, you could have that run in an automated way, like let's say once a month, and it would always be checking for new data for you. So to review, we went over 3 modes of data access today. We talked a little bit about the CDT, as well as our shared data APIs. And then next up, we're going to hear from Srini for our live hands-on portion of how to use the third method of shared data access, the MCP server. So I don't know if there are any questions in the chat or if we want to move on to the MCP server. Sanchita, I'll leave that to you.
Sure, yeah, I don't see any questions, but please feel free to post the questions and we'll try to either answer live at a later time or type. Yeah, so Sammy, as you say, like, we just have seen how CDT and Swagger APIs, they provide programmatic access to the data. Now we will build on that foundation and look at the next evolution in data access, how AI can connect to and interact with data through an MCP server. To walk us through AI for data access, connect to MCP server, I would like to welcome Srini from the ImmPort technical team.
Thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Sanchita, and thanks, Sammy, for the great presentation. I really enjoyed going through all the code in the notebook. Let me quickly share my screen so we can. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So hey everyone, I'm Srinivas Chepuri. I'm the technical lead on the ImmPort project, and today I'll walk you guys through this hands-on part of the data discovery session. So before I begin, I would like to share this URL with you all. It's an HTML guide, or one of our team members will share the link for you all in the chat. Yeah, since I cannot access the chat window anymore. Okay, so let's dive in. And yeah, quick thanks to Sammy for walking us through all the APIs and the web interface to do data discovery of immunology data that ImmPort publicly shares. In this session, yeah, we're going to walk you through our new ImmPort MCP server. Will help you create an ImmPort account, set up an ImmPort account, set up your Claude AI free web account, and how to connect your Claude to our ImmPort MCP. And then in the part 3, we'll get into the actual data discovery exercise. We do have a section dedicated for Q&A. So yeah, if you run into any questions, yeah, feel free to post it in the Q&A window, and we'll address them towards the end of the session. And as we are walking through this exercise, if you run into any issues, just drop in your issue in the chat. Our team is actively looking at the chat, and we'll try to resolve your issues. We also created like a couple of demo credentials. If you run into issues creating accounts, yeah, feel free to reach out in the chat. Our team will get back to you. So with that as the context, also, yeah, I'd like to point out, if you've already created an ImmPort account and if you already have a Cloud AI account, just bear with me. Yeah, we would like to give some time for everybody else to get these accounts set up, and then we can quickly move to our part 3. All right. And a couple of disclaimers. Yeah, we've chosen Claude AI for this session. It doesn't mean that we're endorsing or promoting Claude over other AI tools. We just picked it for the simplicity. It's available online through a web interface. It has a free account tier. You don't have to install anything. And it really, I think Claude really sets up adding a custom MCP tool. The process it's very straightforward. So that's one of the reasons why we're using Claude today. But if you're interested in using any other AI agents like Anti-Gravity, Claude Code, ChatGPT, you feel free to you're free to use any of those. Refer to the appendix link here, and yeah, there's some good documentation available already out there. I see Sammy raised her hand. Sammy, do you have any questions?
Sorry, I think that was the extraneous mouse click.
Oh, okay. No worries. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we have about 60 minutes. So we'll spend like 10 minutes in setting up ImmPort account, 10 minutes connecting your ImmPort and Claude to the MCP server. Then we'll do the data discovery, and then we'll get into the Q&A session. So before we begin, yeah, I would like to give you a little bit refresher. I know Sammy already went through the background on the MCP. On a high level, yeah, if you've just joined the session, just gives you some more context on what MCP is and what we're dealing with in this exercise. So think of MCP, yeah, it basically stands for a Model Context Protocol. It's an open standard built by Anthropic. It basically lets you define tools, describe those tools, also provides additional resources for AI agents, to act on the questions that you're asking. And also provides, MCP also has a way to define some system prompts where AI agent can use those as some guidance or some instructions on how to, tackle a given question. So think of MCP as a translator that sits in between your AI clients. You pose a question in plain English. It tries to take that question, understands the question, and tries to identify right tools to call upon to basically arrive at an answer for your given question. And these tool calls are nothing but API calls. In this case, these are just HTTP REST API calls that are being made to the import APIs that Sammy just walked you guys through. And before, I would like to give some more context. You might be wondering, like, why build an MCP when you can directly point AI agents directly to the API documentation? I highly recommend this article for you all. It talks about how API documentation is not really meant for AI agents. It's really meant for a human, to go through API documentation. The richer the documentation for your APIs is better for a human to understand. But at the same time, if an AI agent is trying to understand the heavy text-based API documentation, it can get confused because there are too many choices that it needs to make for making those API calls. So it's very important for an AI agent to have like a very curated minimalist tool set to choose from. That's one of the reasons why we built our own MCP server. We have as you can see, we have very good extensive documentation on all our APIs. And as Sammy walked through, we have like about 86 API endpoints, which can be very overwhelming for an AI agent to pick and choose when answering questions. I think that's where the curated tool sets excel. Also, yeah, as I mentioned, we have about 7 MCP tools right now available in this iteration. These are primarily meant for searching studies, searching subjects, getting additional study data for a given study or a couple of studies. We also hand curated a new tool, which basically, like for a given study accession, it gives you like a breakdown of all the row counts that's available for that study within our data model. So I think this has been a very useful tool for AI agents to first figure out what's available for a given study and then make the subsequent API calls. So that way there is no redundancy or there is no additional overhead for API calls. Yeah, and then we have a tool for actually getting the files. There's another additional tool. This lets you pull data across multiple studies. Like if you're interested in pulling assay results, you can use this tool to pull data from across many studies. And as you have already noticed, we do maintain controlled vocabulary. And this is something we kind of create a cache in our MCP server. So we are kind of reducing all those additional API calls to pull the control vocabulary into the context window. All right. Yeah, with that as the context for the session, I would like to move on to the first part, which is setting up our import account. And there are really two ways to create an import account. One is you can use our native registration page where you can start with your email address. There is another path, which is a bit faster. If you already have a Gmail or a Google account, you can register an import account using the sign in with Gmail. So today for demonstration, I'm going to use the native registration. So let me switch to another window here. Let's go to import.org. So this is our landing page. You can click on the login button here. Let me click on this register. Yeah, if you have a Google account and you want to try sign in with Google, yeah, feel free to do that. For the session, I'm going to choose a native account. So click on register here, click on continue. So you pick a username. So this has to be a unique username. It's already taken up. It will give you a little error message here. Yeah, the registration page itself is pretty straightforward. Just follow along the instructions on the form. I'm going to use you can use any valid email address. Yeah, make sure that you use an active email account because you'll be receiving OTP codes and a link to activate your account. So make sure the email that you're using is accessible for the session. Give your organization. And just I see a hand raised. I can take a question while I'm creating an account here.
All right, you should be unmuted. Go ahead and feel free to speak.
Yes, thank you. I am pasting the OTP code and get an error second time in a row. And I thought that perhaps this is a browser issue, but it's unfortunately happening in two browsers.
Okay. Yeah, can somebody from the import team look into Andrew's issue?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I've clicked on registration and you should now receive an email with an activation link. So switch to your email account, click on the activation link. Once you activate the link, you can start logging in into your account. So click on login there. Let's make sure it's the right password. All right. Yeah. So once you log in, you'll have to pick an MFA authentication method. For again, for simplicity, I'm going to choose email OTP codes. So in this method, you will basically receive OTP codes in the email that you registered your account with. Click on continue. This is the registered email address. Click on send OTP. Let me see. Yeah, and you should receive an OTP code in your email account. And click on submit. Okay. Let's see. I'm logged in. All right, let me close the session. Probably an error with the session. Okay. Yeah, I think that was like some issue with the cookies in the browser. I've been logging in and logging out. But yeah, I think it works now. So yeah, once you authenticate your OTP, MFA OTP codes, you can use your credentials to log in, and you can access your profile page by clicking on my profile here. And this basically completes your ImmPort account setup. I'll take a quick pause here. I'll wait for everyone else to catch up. Let me see if I can pull up the window. Again, looking for any questions in the chat. All right. Yeah, I haven't seen any issues being reported, or I'm not seeing any open questions. Just give like a minute more for folks to catch up.
Just chiming in, we did have a message from someone in the chat who was having issues with their OTP code. I have found this is not unique to ImmPort. Some websites have problems with this as well. If you've copied and pasted the OTP code from your email, sometimes that can cause issues. So if you're running into an OTP code error, try just going to the OTP code text box and manually typing in. It's not a very long set of digits, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem. But if you're running into that and it's not working, another thing you can try is log out of your ImmPort account and log back in, which will generate another OTP code that will be fresh, and then you can again try typing that in manually. If you're still running into any issues, feel free to reach out in the chat and one of us can help you with a demo account to use for the session today.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a while for the OTP codes to arrive in your email box. So yeah, give it like some time if you're not receiving OTP codes. All right. Yeah. So in the interest of time, I'd like to move on to part 2. So now that you have your ImmPort account set up, let's move to part 2. This is where you will basically create an account in Claude and connect to ImmPort MCP using the credentials that we just created for ImmPort. So let's dive into this part. So I'd like you to start with the Claude AI link here. Let me copy this link. Again, on Claude, yeah, either you can use your email, create a new account, or you can sign in with Google. So in this case, for simplicity, I'm going to click on sign in with Google here, and I'm using the same account that I used for import. Perfect. So I'm now logged in. And as you can see, it's a free tier. You don't have to pay for any access for this session. I think you should have enough quota to use to run the MCP tools for this session. But if at some point, if you run out of tokens or quota, yeah, you can just follow the session and you can try it later because I think it kind of resets every couple of hours. So, but I think the exercise that we have chosen, it should not take a lot of tokens. Okay, so let's take a quick pause here, just making sure that everyone's on the same page. And I don't have access to the Q&A. Anyone from import team, please let me know if anyone's running into any issues.
No issues right now. Srini, looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on. So to connect your Claude AI agent to an import MCP server, you'll have to click on the customize option here. So click on customize and then choose connectors. And since import is not a registered MCP server yet, it's considered a custom MCP server. So you click on add here and click on custom connector. If import were registered, you could have just browsed connectors here and picked import. But for now, since it's not registered, click on custom connector. And let me go back to the guide here. So these are the connector details. Name, I think call it any name of your choice. But the most critical part here is the URL for the MCP server and the client ID. So let's copy. Let's copy the URL here. As I mentioned, you can call it anything. Critical part is make sure you have the right URL, make sure there are no extra trailing spaces. And then for the client ID, use import MCP client. This is a public auth client, so we don't really need a client secret for this. So just leave that blank and then click on add. So this should add the connector, but you're not connected yet. Now click on connect. So since you're already logged into import, auto sign-in should click, kick in. And if you, for some reason, if you're logged out from import, then this will, redirect to our import login page. So use the same import credentials to log in one more time. But since I'm already logged in to an import application, the single sign-on should kick in and it should log me in. Well, yeah, that worked. So yeah, once you're connected, you should see a message like this, connected to import. And this kind of exposes the 7 tools to this AI agent. And we talked about these tools a little bit ago. And here you can basically control, you can grant permissions to each of these tool calls. You can, either always allow setting for all these tool calls, or you can, approve based on the need and on the go. So let's close this. Let's make sure everyone's on the same page. Let us know if you're running into any issues connecting to the import MCP server. Again, import team, yeah, please let me know if anyone has any issues in the chat.
So I think one question in the Q&A, Codex has a different MCP server set up. How would you set it up with that?
Yep, we do have some guidance on a couple of other clients. Yeah, I've tried connecting Claude Code, Google Anti-Gravity. I haven't really tried Codex, but yeah, it can. Is that a desktop-based tool or a CLI, or is it a web-based agent? If it's web-based, yeah, you can use the OAuth setup, the same setup that we went through for Claude AI. If it's a desktop client, you can use our API key method, where you can generate an API key and feed that into the JSON connecting file.
Great, thank you, Srini. It looks like it is CLI. So.
CLI, okay. Yeah, we've tried with Cloud Code. I'm assuming it'll be something similar for Codex.
We have there's a few folks in the chat that are getting some blocking or site can't be reached. Maybe if you have some general tips for troubleshooting that, we'll go ahead and give those out. And then if folks are having further issues, we'll please, let us know and we'll handle that, directly with the users as well.
Yeah, if you're on restricted networks, Cloud AI might not, open for you guys. Unfortunately, yeah, you'll have to either switch to another network and proceed, or you can just follow along the session. And we'll share the guide with you guys, so you can always try this later if you're running into issues with connecting or accessing the site itself.
Okay.
All right, I think we're hitting the 2 o'clock deadline. Sorry, I heard something. Anyone has any question?
Thank you. I was just saying that I think that takes care of all the open questions now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now let's get into the data discovery exercise. So at this point, yeah, you should have your import account set up and connected it to Claude. So let's now move on to the AI exercise. So this is a similar exercise that Sammy walked us through. We'll be finding rheumatoid arthritis studies in ImmPort with female subjects. We'll deep dive into one of the studies that we find interesting from the results. We'll pull biosamples, the structure of the metadata for that study, and we'll also download a couple of raw files. And all of this we'll do in plain English. There is no code. So if you were going through the notebook and wondering, or regretting why you were not a programmer to do that data discovery part that Sammy walked you through. So this is the part where MCP will really help you out, do the data discovery without using any code, and all of this in natural language. So let's dive into the exercise. I'm also sharing the full conversation here. So you can also follow along the prompts by clicking on this conversation. It will walk you through the prompts, the exact output, and you can follow along using that conversation as well. Also, one quick disclaimer, since the AI agents, it's the nature is undeterministic, so you might not find the pixel to pixel mapping of answers. Like the answers can vary, but the underlying data will be grounded in API calls. So the data will always give you the right answer, but the structure, the formatting of the answer will differ. So I'm just giving that as a disclaimer before we get into. So the first prompt that we're going to use today is this one, finding RA studies in ImmPort that have female subjects. So let's switch to our Claude window here. Let's start with this question. So yeah, please notice that I'm not using the term rheumatoid arthritis as is. It understands that RA, stands for rheumatoid arthritis, given the context of now that it's connected to ImmPort MCP server. So now let's see what it pulls. So at this point, yeah, it's negotiating with the ImmPort MCP server. It's going through all the MCP tools that are available, and then it will pick the right tool and make the tool call. Okay, it's taking longer than anticipated. Let's make sure we're still connected. Yeah, stay connected. Internet unstable error on my end.
And Srini, we also have a question here
Sure.
from Wade saying import the trigger for it to use the connected MCP.
Yeah, I think even if you don't mention import, it will, since it's already connected to import MCP server, it considers all the tools that are available within import. So even if you change the prompt to say something without import, it should still find the relevant tools and make those calls. Okay, since it's taking a while to pull the answer, let's just switch to the conversation that we saved.
Srini, there are some more.
Quickly ask,
Some more in the chat.
Has anyone
Take a look.
gotten?
Yeah. I see some messages in the chat. So if you get a chance, take a look.
Okay, let me switch to. I think I'll have to unshare to access the question.
Oh, okay. And then maybe we can then deal with it. One of the members can take a look. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a general question, yeah, I can try to address it.
Yeah, Srini, I can help kind of summarize the chat. I know it's difficult to see while you're sharing there, but let's see. We had one question. I've input this prompt using Opus 5 Max, not Sonnet 5 Medium. Does that matter? So will the responses be different depending on what model is used?
Yeah, so yeah, the synthesis part differs based on the model that you picked, but the tool call will basically return the same data. So the API response will be the same no matter which model you use. But yeah, the synthesis part or the analyzing part on top of that data changes based on the model that you pick. And in the free tier, I think it's Sonnet 5. But yeah, if you have another model of your choice, you can always pick the other one. So for
Thank you.
Yeah, so demonstration, let me switch to my other cloud account. I think it's the free account is acting up. So let's use this one. This is a paid account, so probably I'll have more room for tokens. Let's try this.
While
So
you're
in this
shifting
case,
there.
let me remove. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think we've got one more question while you're shifting there. I think this is a good question because this is common among the different models and tools, right? So one user had an observation that their response only found 13 RA studies instead of if you search this CDT, you may see 17, right? And so maybe could speak a little bit to, discrepancies and things that can come up with the AI models.
Sure. So let me go back to the saved search here. You're right. So if in CDT, if you pick rheumatoid arthritis as condition or disease, you'll first shortlist 17 studies. But since we are interested in studies with female subjects, so it further drills down and adds the gender included filter, and it sets it to female. So then it shortlists it to 13. Hope that answers.
Thank you. But I think that's a very important observation that you always need to double check the outputs of these models, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, I think that's most of the questions in the chat right now, and
Okay.
feel free to move on. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So for the first prompt, yeah, you should see 13 studies having rheumatoid arthritis as the condition or disease, and female as the subject demographic. So from this list, let's pick a study to do a deep dive. For demonstration, I'm picking SDY998. This is one of our popular studies. It's one of the most downloaded data set from ImmPort. So let's try to pull additional, data about SDY998, and your follow-up prompt can be something like this. What's SDY998? How is the study structured? And let's also pull arms. So in this question, you're basically chaining up multiple MCP tool calls. So it will first pull the summary endpoint for study SDY998. It also pulls a couple of additional metadata, especially the study availability MCP tool, where it gives you an overall picture of what's available within that study. And then since we're specifically asking for ARM, it will pull study API endpoint to pull that information. So if you tried that prompt, you should see something like this. It will summarize the study. This is the study summary data that's pulled. And since we asked for arms specifically, pulled the arms available in that study, and it found these 3 arms. And this is where, your model, how your model, acts on the data differs. In this case, I used Sonnet, and this is the analysis part that it with. As a follow-up question, now that I'm seeing RA and OA as the different arms, I would like to pull like some biosamples that are available in this study. So you can follow up with this prompt, something like this. You can say, can you pull biosample data and show me what sample types came from which arm? And you can also ask, chain it up with another analysis question. You can say, I'm curious if RA and OA were sampled the same way. So you're basically asking it to pull the data, biosample data, and also ask a follow-up question on that data. So in this case, it pulled a biosample API endpoint and pulled the data from the underlying data model, and this is the analysis based on the data that it sees. It says here that RA and OA were sampled the same way structurally. Every arm got the same panel. And then it pointed out the key differences. The difference is not the volume. It is in volume, not the method. And that's the analysis part of this. And at this point, if you're more curious about the analysis, if you want to validate if its analysis is correct, you can always follow up with more additional questions. And then in this exercise, I also want to walk you through like some of the examples on how to download the actual raw files from a study. So my next follow-up question is, what files does ImmPort actually have on file for this study? So at this point, I'm asking it to pull the manifest for this study and walk us through all the raw files that are available for this study. So I did an MCP tool call to get the manifest, and it found that this study has about 1,000 files on file, and these are the different categories: the study protocol documents, release packages. So this is the packaging set of files that we create when a study goes from a private workspace into a public workspace. We package studies metadata in a couple of formats, like in a tab metadata format and a MySQL metadata format where you can, just pull the MySQL zip and load into a MySQL database. We also provide manifest in a text based format. We also provide summary and the table count. So it's just walking you through all the files that are available for study and for download. And this is the interesting part. It also found about 956 raw result files. It's categorizing these files based on the file types that it found in the manifest. And if you're interested in downloading all of the study, we create a pre-compiled all data zip file, a very big study. It has about 11.7 terabytes of data. So if you're interested, you can generate a download link for this all data zip and just download that. For demonstration purposes, I'm picking a simple file to download. I'm asking Claude to grab a download link for one of the histology files. And it just picked a histology file randomly. It picked this one. It's about 103 kilobytes. It uses the download API endpoint to generate the download link. And this is actually a link to our CloudFront S3 bucket where you can download the file directly by clicking the link. So when you click on the link, it should basically download the file for you. And yeah, I think this exploration exercise, yeah, you can, continue exploring more studies. You can ask if your research focus is, something different, you can start over, start a new chat, new session, and, start it from there. But overall, yeah, the idea is the ImmPort provides these MCP tools for these AI agents, to make these tool calls to basically address or answer your question that you asked in natural language. Let me switch to the guide here. We did curate some bonus prompts that you can try. Also, I would like to point out here that you don't have to choose the terms from ImmPort's control vocabulary. Since you're playing with this AI agent, agent kind of understands the context and makes the relevant import MCP tool calls. So in this case, you can also have a question where you use terms that are completely not found in import studies directly when you use a free text search, but it still find relevant terms and does a API call behind the scenes for you using those synonyms. Like for women's health, it can pick all these categories that it puts under women's health category. Like it can pick pregnancy and preterm birth, vaccine response during pregnancy. Even though you're not stating these explicitly, your AI agent will help you pick the relevant terms to use to make those API calls. And similarly, we have a couple of other bonus prompts that you can try. And it's all available in this HTML guide here. I'll take a quick pause here. If you have any questions, we can look at them.
Sure, Srinivas, thank you. There's a couple of good observations, I think, in the chat here. And then I know we do have to, move on in the agenda here. But I will remind everyone, we did post the email to the ImmPort Help Desk. So if you'd like to continue the conversation or have questions after the session here, if we don't have time to get to yours live, please email us and happy to continue the chat. One observation here, so the message responses may vary depending on how your AI model decides to parse your question as a search. So can we control part because of reproducibility? So great question. I know, Srini, something that the team here has been thinking about a lot. So you maybe that would be helpful to shed a little light on some tools and techniques available to do just that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we don't have any control on how the AI model, predicts the analysis part. I think what as a import and as a MCP server provider, or you only have control on the tools and improvising the tools description, making sure the AI agent can understand the capabilities of the tool. But yeah, you cannot really control how the model interprets the data, that's coming out of the MCP server.
In terms of your point about reproducibility, the reproducible part of this is going to be what results are returned from the tool. So if the tool is called by your AI model with the same query parameters, it's going to return the same set of results. So that's the part that is repeatable. And then, as Srini mentioned, it's kind of up to whatever AI model you're using, how they interpret those results. And that's where you, as the researcher, needs to come in and have that second set of eyes and make sure that the way it's interpreting those results is how you would have intended it to be.
Right.
Right.
Just to extend, I mean, that's why human in the loop is so important. Depending on what results you get, make sure that that's making sense to you, especially for analysis. It's great. It's a reduction in time in terms of search and findability. But at the end, we as humans, we as a scientist, we need to make sure that these are the studies making sense to us. That is very, very important.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think, yeah, if you're using this for analysis purposes, yeah, make sure you verify the outcomes from your data discovery exercise. I think I see a question now.
We're gonna go break at 2:25 Eastern, 11:25 Pacific. But Srini, I think you can hang around, right? A little bit if people have any
Sure,
questions.
sure.
Then
Yeah. Yeah, also if you have any feedback on, your experience so far, if you're finding any gaps in the tools, please feel free to, share with us. We're also looking for feedback on uh, the MCP server itself.
Yeah. And Srini, I think there's a continuation of the conversation in the chat just about, the verification. Sometimes human in the loop doesn't actually help, right, with certain challenges. And I know the different, techniques that folks can apply themselves as far as the RAG frameworks and things of that nature. I mean, I think a lot can be done, right, beyond we're offering the connection, right? And then the hope is that folks out there can take that connection and put their own parameters and things around it as well, as an option. So if you have any other thoughts on that, that might be helpful to share.
Yeah, again, yeah, it comes down to, yeah, I think you're hitting the right point there. Yeah, you need to work with the prompts. Yeah, there is a whole prompt engineering, that's being built out there. Yeah, we can come up with some guidance on prompts and make, how to make them more strict. We can, maybe create like a document on some of the example prompts that you can start with. I think that was the whole purpose of, even having those additional bonus structures. And we'd like your feedback, on how these prompts are working. If there is any additional fine tuning that we need to do on our end. I think this is what I think we are trying to gather some feedback on as well.
Yeah, some further comments about, agents that check on agents, right? Some of those other techniques that are out there and emerging. Absolutely. Yep. All good.
So just one final comment on that. I think that what Srini is showing here is the tool that we are making available to your AI agent of choice, but then it's on you as the user to make sure that your AI agent is using it as you intended. And that's very analogous to our APIs. We make all of our APIs available and they're very well documented, but we can't necessarily control that you're going to formulate the endpoint correctly when you're calling the API. So we're making these tools available and then we don't have complete control over how they are used by the AI agent. That's where you as the user come into play. So there's definitely different guardrails that we can put around these tools that we can provide guidance to, like Srini said, but at the end of the day, it is just a tool and it's important that that tool is used well.
Yeah, thanks, Sammy. And then, yeah, the comment about API call to return fixed output versus there's a lot more variability with the AI agents. So again, different considerations, right, for using those methodologies.
Yeah.
And at times I will rely on the codes. Back when we didn't have MCP, I mean, we will go and code and make sure what we are looking for. So once you retrieve that these are the data sets or studies, and based on what the question is, we can have like table 1, which is where you get all the breakdowns of by race, gender, what you're looking for, how it looks like kind of a data snapshot statistically, before we go deep into any analysis, I guess. At least I would do that. Still go old school, helping me search and then do my own statistical analysis. Just want to rule out that whatever we are looking at is the right answer, or at least help me in getting to what we are interested in, I guess.
Yeah. And just want to quickly mention that our next iteration of MCP server will have additional tools to support data submission. I think that was one of the points that I think, Andre, you brought up early on in this session. So we'll be looking into providing some guidance on how to prepare your upload templates, how to validate, and how to use these MCP tools to actually make an upload into your private workspace. So that's on our roadmap for next year.